I was set with the heavy task of trying to explain to someone what it's like to live with this condition. I struggled to portray what it feels like to live in this body. Then it came to me. A run. Most people at some point in their lives have gone for a run. A run usually follows a familiar pattern. As you begin, the feet move slowly until you finally settle into a rhythm. As time goes by, you focus on your breathing and your body relaxes. Eventually, your feet come to a halt as you finish the run. At which point, you're left suddenly exhausted. Your heart races as you try to catch your breath. But what if, instead of happening after a run, this happened every time you went to stand up? If whenever you were upright, your body acted as though you had just gone for a run, exhausted, heart racing, struggling to breathe. Instead of endorphins, you got dizziness, and if you're not careful, you might just faint. This is my life with POTS. In 2011, after high school, I started playing soccer at a community college, and I got a really bad concussion, and I just was never the same after that concussion. I got really sick, and I had a lot of symptoms, and they weren't sure what was post-concussion and if there was something else playing into it. That was the hardest time of my life because there were so many unknowns. I was going to doctor after doctor after doctor just trying to figure out what was wrong because I couldn't even really get out of bed. I wasn't functioning. And at that point, I couldn't play soccer anymore. I had to keep withdrawing from classes because I couldn't make it to class. Each doctor tried different tests and no one could come up with what was happening and they couldn't name it. I had no answers and it was really difficult to navigate that because I'd go to one doctor and they say bed rest for 2 weeks. So then I'd sit out the 2 weeks and it didn't help. They just kept saying 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, and then a month turned into 2 years essentially. I wasn't doing the normal things that 18-year-olds were doing. I wasn't starting college or hanging out with friends. I was essentially at home, which was isolating. And even harder was not knowing what the future held or why it was happening to me or what was causing it. So I eventually was able to get enough strength and feel better enough to go back to community college. And then I ended up transferring into a university. And when I transferred into the university, I consider myself fully recovered, honestly. And so I was excited. I had moved to a different state, and I was about a month in when I fainted. Fainting was one of my symptoms that I had before in that 2-year stretch, but they said kind of the same thing, bed rest, give your body a break. We're not quite sure. So I gave my body about a week, but then within the next few months, it just progressed even more. So after that, I started fainting multiple times a day, and that's without exaggeration. I couldn't make it across campus safely or just physically I couldn't make it. I could not see a doctor until the end of the first semester, and this happened at the very beginning of the semester. So it was a few months before I could even see a doctor. It was in December when I went and saw the neurologist, and that's when I was officially diagnosed with POTS. And there was a mix of emotions with that. I was relieved that I had a name for what was happening to me, but it was all still new to me. It was so emotional for me to think about going back to a place where there was so much uncertainty and just sadness and heaviness and grief, really. My biggest question was, if it didn't go away, what does that mean for my life? In those moments, my quality of life was so poor. I was fainting, like I said, so many times a day that I was questioning what that really meant for me and for my life. The diagnostic criteria for POTS is when a person with POTS goes from a lying to a sitting or standing position, their heartbeat raises at least 30 beats per minute. And with that, there's usually a collection of symptoms. Fainting is one big one for me. Not everyone with POTS faints, but I do. There's dizziness, presyncope, which is like the feeling right before you faint. People feel palpitations, which is like you can feel your heart beating fast. People commonly think that getting up slowly fixes the problem. If you get up slowly, then it gives your body time to regulate, which is true. So if I get up too quickly, I am way more prone to fainting than if I get up slowly. The issue is that it's not just about getting up slowly, it's about being upright. So anything that I do upright causes me to be tachycardic, which means a high heart rate, and to feel all of these symptoms. And I think that's something that people often don't either realize or they don't understand. So people, I think, are well-intentioned and they'll say, get up slowly, make sure to get up slowly. And at this point in time, it's an automatic response for me. Most of the time when I go to stand, I get up slowly, but it doesn't fix the problem. Between medication and lifestyle modifications, I have reached a point to where I'm mostly stable. I don't faint as often, but I do have sick days and I do have flare-ups. A couple months ago, I had a really bad day and I was sitting on the ground and I just couldn't do anything upright. And I remember thinking about how people don't understand that how hard it is on those days to function, pretty much stuck to the couch or to the bed. And that's really hard. If you think about your routine, your daily routine, if you were to list out all of those things, how many of those things would be upright, right? Brushing your teeth, eating your breakfast, working out, feeding the dog, whatever it is you do in the morning, it's probably upright, which means that for me or someone like me who has POTS, all of those things can be a challenge. And that's really hard. When you Google POTS or when someone explains it to you, you think of the characteristics of POTS, which is, oh yeah, when you go to stand up, your heart rate gets high. What they're missing is the bigger picture, which is dysautonomia. The autonomic nervous system regulates so many different things, and just to name a few, it's digestion, heart rate, blood pressure, thermoregulation. Any system that the autonomic nervous system regulates doesn't normally function or regulate normally for like it would for most people. So it's been 6 years since I was officially diagnosed with POTS. And at this point, I am very fortunate enough that I have a team of doctors and a medication regimen and lifestyle modifications that allow me to live a more normal life, or a life that I feel is more what I would want for my life. And because of that, not every day is a bad day for me, which I am really thankful for. But I do have some bad days, and I do have flare-ups where I'll have periods of time where I'm kind of back in that space where it's hard to function. And although you can't live in my body, I wanted people to better understand what it's like to really struggle day in and day out. I have many triggers. It's not just standing for me, and I think people don't realize that. It affects every single aspect of my life. Most of my friends are young and they're healthy and they can pick up and go on a hike spur of the moment. If they invite me, there's a series of questions that I have to ask myself because I live with this condition before I say yes to going on the hike. If it's summer and it's hot, it's not a good idea for me to go midday or afternoon. I have to plan ahead when I'm going to take my medications because ultimately I don't want to go at a time where my medications are not working to my advantage because that could make me sick. I have to think and plan ahead of how much water I'm going to both bring with me and also drink because hydration is really key, especially with exercise. With the water, I even have to think about how much water I'm going to bring. If my backpack is too heavy, it exerts my body even more. And so that will add to the stress and the likelihood of me getting sick on the trail. Getting sick being symptomatic or fainting. I also have to think about what I'm doing the next day. If I plan something big like a long hike where I'm exerting my body, maybe my body gets through it, great. But likely after that, I go through what I call a crash, where my body says, nope, not gonna happen today. Essentially what I'm doing is I'm planning an event and then at least 1 to 2 rest days after that event. So if I have something important the next day, I might consider not going or doing that hike because I have to weigh which, doing the hike versus what I have planned the next day. This condition has taught me that I have to be okay with listening to my body and resting. If I push through, my body will make me listen, which is a really harsh reality. It's not something that I can not listen to. There's not a choice there. I wouldn't trade this journey for anything, but it's hard and it is tiresome and confusing and it's emotional. Throughout this journey, I have been through the stages of grief many times. Each time I have a flare, I go back through the stages. I'm angry and I'm frustrated and I am sad and I am still working on finding a place where I can be completely at peace and accept what is my life now. I am so thankful that I am stable and I am able to do some of the things that I love again. The 3 years that I was at that university, I didn't know if I would ever reach this point. And I'm here. And I pray that I stay here and that I'm able to manage daily with this condition, but that is not the reality for everyone that lives with POTS. Some people they're on their own journey, and not everyone has found what works for them or their body doesn't respond. And that's one of the big reasons why I wanted to make this video, to bring awareness to this condition, because some people are still stuck in that.